Hi, welcome to Hannity and a busy News Friday. We're going to have a live report on the terrible shooting outside of Chicago. Our thoughts and prayers especially to those who've been victims, including 4 police officers. But first, in 2016, you, the American people, you made history. You elected as president a fighter, a deal maker, a disruptor. You sent a leader to the White House who is clearly unafraid to dismantle the status quo in Washington, D.C., the swamp, the sewer, and also somebody that is now, in 2 years, we see he fights to keep his promises and get things done that he said he'd get done, frankly, come hell or high water. Tonight, what you're witnessing is Donald Trump doing whatever it takes to fulfill his promises. And more importantly, this is about protecting the lives of the American people and securing the country on our borders. Many lawmakers, especially Democrats, ignored the crisis at our southern border. They said it's manufactured. 1 month ago, Speaker Pelosi vowed that Congress wouldn't spend more than $1 on any border wall. It was immoral. As it turns out, she's a little off. Take a look.
I went through Congress. I made a deal. I got almost $1.4 billion when I wasn't supposed to get $1. Not $1. He's not going to get $1. Well, I got $1.4 billion, but I'm not happy with it.
Nor am I. But the president's right. He got $1.375 billion for the wall and a bill that tripled the funding for barriers on the southern border over the previous budget. And it's only 7 months, this budget. It killed so-called poison pills like any amnesty. It's not in the bill for illegals. No pathway to citizenship. No limit on ICE detentions. In fact, instead of a limit, this bill funds 5,000 more beds for illegal immigrant detention. And remember all the far-left, radical, socialist Democrats calling for ICE to be abolished? Well, this bill actually includes a historic funding increase for ICE, including money for an additional 600 highly needed professional officers. Now, still, you heard the president. He's not happy, nor should anybody be happy, because $1.375 billion for a wall is not enough. And it's why I have called this bill garbage from the very beginning. And it's why the president is now officially, as of today, declaring the national emergency that he's been telegraphing to the world he's going to do. Take a look.
So I'm going to be signing a national emergency. And what we really want to do is simple. It's not like it's complicated. It's very simple. We want to stop drugs from coming into our country. We want to stop criminals and gangs from coming into our country. It's an invasion. We have an invasion of drugs and criminals coming into our country that we stop, but it's very hard to stop. With a wall, it would be very easy. So I think that we will be very successful in court.
I believe that as well. Now, let's break down exactly what this means and why this plan will ultimately be very successful. As the president declares this national emergency, the administration will gain access to roughly $8 billion. The president will be able to use the $1.375 billion from the budget compromise, so progress continues straight through the rest of the fiscal year, which is till October. $600 million from the Treasury Department's Drug Forfeiture Fund, $2.5 billion from the Department of Defense's Drug Interdiction Program, an additional $3.6 billion from the Department of Defense's Military Construction Account. And he knows the Democrats, as we predicted, they're going to go judge shopping. They're going to challenge this constitutional executive action in court. But their efforts, ultimately, they will come up short. One constitutional scholar after another agrees with us. The president is standing on firm legal ground. Let's look at U.S. Code. Oh, law passed by Congress, signed into law. It explicitly states, quote, construction of roads and fences, oh, that would be a barrier, a wall, and installation of lighting to block drug smuggling corridors across international boundaries of the United States. Well, the president also has standing based on U.S. Code. Right there you can see it, 2808. That allows construction projects for national security. And that's not even all. Since 1978, a whopping 58 national emergencies have been declared by various presidents, starting with Jimmy Carter. And guess what? 31 of those national emergency declarations are still in effect today. Former President Obama, he declared 10 national emergencies, including one that countered the rise in crime from a deadly Mexican cartel. Simply put, there is major legal, legislative, and constitutional precedents for this national emergency when it comes to stopping drugs, gangs, cartels, trafficking, and everything else, and all the security risks to Americans at the border as a result of an open border. Remember, 300 Americans are dying weekly from heroin, 90% of which is trafficked across our southern border. In 2017, more than 70,000 Americans died from drug overdoses. Excuse me, is that a manufactured crisis? Last year, fentanyl trafficking across the southern border shot up a whopping 122%. In Arizona alone, fentanyl deaths have tripled since 2015. And sadly, drug carnage, well, that's just one part of the crisis. In just the past 2 years, 4,000 criminal aliens were arrested for homicide, 30,000 for sex crimes, 100,000 for violent assaults. That's a 2-year period. Last year alone, 800 gang members apprehended at the border, a 50% increase from 2017. And today, the president had a very powerful message to one, well, fake news hack who tried to claim that this is all just a manufactured crisis. Same talking point the media uses as their best friends in the Democratic Party. Take a look.
What do you say to your critics who say that you are creating a national emergency, that you're concocting a national emergency here in order to get your wall because you couldn't get it through other ways?
Moms, what do you think? Do you think I'm creating something? Ask these incredible women who lost their daughters and their sons. Okay? Because your question is a very political question, because you have an agenda. You're CNN. You're fake news.
Ouch. Maybe Jim ought to walk over. Maybe talk to the angel moms and dads that we have on this show. Made him look really weak, bad, pathetic, heartless, and looks like when he's forced to face brave angel moms and dads who've lived through hell, pain and suffering that none of us can imagine, he didn't want to talk to them. Now, tonight, no matter what you hear from Democrats or the hate Trump media, the wall is getting built. The president, the fighter, the disruptor, the deal maker, tenacious, unrelenting, is keeping his promises. But also, he's winning. Are you sick of winning yet? The American people are the real winners here. This is a huge win. Forget the president. Put him aside for a minute. This is a win for the country. This is a win for you and your families and our safety and our security. Which brings us tonight to our Hannity Watch on what is the abusively biased hate Trump media. Now, recently, the media's echo chamber, they've been spreading some pretty unbelievable fake news about the president and me and our relationship. Why they're obsessed with this, I don't know. Take a look.
This is a president who is terrified of angering his base, and I think he is concerned. I can imagine him being on the phone with Lou Dobbs and Sean Hannity and telling him, okay, I have to do this because he's afraid of losing this news cycle to hacks like Sean Hannity and Lou Dobbs and Ann Coulter. He has set a precedent that will haunt the Republican Party for decades, if not for generations.
2014 Mike Pence and 2014 Republicans battled then President Obama in public and in court over similar actions. But 2019 Mike Pence and many 2019 Republicans are already saying, thank you, Sean Hannity, may I have another?
All right, let me just say up front, the president nor anybody in the White House ever called to calm me down, whatever that means. And I'll also say this, with all due respect to all of you guys over there, it's really cracking me up here. I'm thrilled with it because I've been calling for secure borders and build the wall first for a long time. By the way, for all of you geniuses that are overpaid in the hate Trump media and kind of lazy, let me explain what I do for a living. I am a talk show host. In other words, I'm a member of the press. We're like the whole newspaper on this show. I can produce hours and hours of radio and television where I do straight news. We do tons of investigative reporting you're too lazy to do or too biased to do. Remember, we were the only show, one of the only shows that vetted Obama, Frank Marshall Davis, and Acorn and Alinsky, and, oh, yeah, let's not forget the Church of GD America, Black Liberation Theology. Remember our coverage of Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn? Remember all of that? We also had some serious investigations on this program into the Duke lacrosse scandal. I actually met with some of the kids and the families. Baltimore, Maryland, we were right. You all in the media were wrong. UVA, Richard Jewell, the scourge of gang violence in Chicago. We put up the names on the show. The man-made drought, Delta smelt in California. We investigated what your kids are up to in spring break. Yeah, we do investigative reporting. We do straight news as a talk show host. And also, we also did our 2-year investigation into the deep state, and we have the evidence that you never paid attention to about what was an attempted coup on the President of the United States, where they let one candidate free in an effort to sabotage the other. And, of course, like every newspaper, yeah, I said, we're like the full news. We give opinion. I don't hide that I am a registered conservative. We even do gossip occasionally in sports. 2 nights ago, we had on Tim Tebow. You see, our First Amendment, freedom of the press, well, part of the free press, you can be a talk show host and do all of those things. It covers many different and unique roles for the press. In doing so, like other so-called journalists, I use sources all the time. I work the phones daily to get information, to do reporting, investigation, so I can give my audience the best information that you guys aren't giving them. And I'll never, ever, by the way, for all you that speculate, I will never confirm, not even deny, who my sources are, who I talk to, who I don't talk to, or even if I talk to people alone. What you have in the media right now is obsession. They got blinders on, and they've got this prism in which they see Donald Trump. Lazy, overpaid people in the hate Trump media, so blinded by their hatred and rage for Donald Trump, they need to get their own sources of information instead of falsely speculating about mine. Now, here's a simple truth. Nobody in the media has ever come close to describing the relationship that I had with the president. That goes back well over 2 decades. And by the way, if one exists, I wouldn't tell you anyway. All right, now to end all fake news reports on how I accurately predicted exactly what the president would do on the border. He didn't tell me. It's simple. I paid attention to all his public comments. He said it over and over and over again. I heard him. You refused to hear him. Remember when he said, I will add whatever I have to add? What do you think he meant? Remember when he actually said many times, I'm looking at the national emergency seriously? He kept saying these things repeatedly. And what those of you in the fake news industry don't seem to understand, the president does listen to other points of view. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's pretty amazing. All of you can't figure out that he makes up his own mind, and it's not hard to understand what he's going to do, because what he has been doing for the last 2 years, what he's been saying over the last week, is usually what he ends up doing. Now, by the way, for the record, I'll say this in all honesty, if the president listened to me, he would have stopped tweeting back in 2016, or at least tweeted less. Because me and a bunch of other people told him, you got to stop. But I got to admit, in retrospect, I actually think he was right to keep doing this, maybe 5% less. Because what he's doing is bypassing the abusive press that is offered, people that hate him every day, and he's getting his message directly to the American people, which, as you can see, in a media landscape full of conspiracy theories, hatred, fake news, is now more important than ever before. Take, for example, this report from Newsbusters. Look at this. All the big 3 networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, they went wild with their hysteria, collusion, coverage, one story that turns out to be false after another. They dedicated over 2,200 minutes of airtime, just the 3 networks. They aired and found 0 seconds minutes for available airtime when the bipartisan Senate report that found no collusion with Russia this week. They didn't cover it at all, because then they'd have to admit they were wrong. And I happen to like the fighter that is in the White House. I do like the man who fights, tenacious, unrelenting, and fights to keep his campaign promises. It's refreshing. It's energizing to watch him go down the list and see all the success for the forgotten men and women that voted for him in 2016. The policies he advocated for in his campaign and he's now delivering on, well, to be very honest, I have been supporting, these are things I publicly stated support for, most of them, for 30 years on radio, 23 years right here on the Fox News Channel. Why? Because conservatism works. It works every time it's applied. Just like I predicted Obama would fail. Oh, 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more in poverty. Look at the president's positive, record-breaking results on the economy alone. New trade policies. We're making more money, more opportunities for Americans. 600,000 manufacturing jobs, 5.3 million new jobs. Yeah, I like those policies, and it's worth fighting for those policies. All right, we'll have more on this later. But first, we do have to turn to our Hannity Watch on the Deep State in light of yesterday's big news, huge bombshell revelation surrounding disgraced, fired FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. Now, last night we laid out the entire case. 2016, small group, high-ranking, unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats, they abused their power in such a way to try to rig the 2016 election in favor of one candidate, Hillary Clinton, over another candidate, Donald Trump. They allowed their chosen candidate, Hillary Clinton, to stay in the race by clearing her of all charges before they even investigated it. Well, things that no other American could ever get away with. Trust me, if you have subpoenaed emails, you better not delete them. You better not acid wash your hard drive and bust up your devices. Now, in July of 2016, Comey Strzok interviewed Hillary. He's the guy that said we're smelly Walmart voters. He's the guy that said Hillary should win 100 million to 0. Anyway, Comey and Strzok and others, they decided to give her a pass. The fix was in. And they didn't prosecute Clinton for what were obvious felony violations of the Espionage Act, including mishandling top secret, classified intelligence on that unsecured private server in a mom-and-pop shop bathroom closet. They also chose not to prosecute her over the biggest slam-dunk obstruction of justice charges when she deleted, acid-washed thousands of subpoenaed emails with bleach spit and beat up her phones with a hammer and ripped out the SIM cards. Any other American would have been tried and they would have been charged with felonies, but not Hillary Clinton. That's what they did, is they abused power. And then also in July of 2016, right after they give her that free pass that keeps her in the presidential election, the same exact people then use Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for phony Russian dirty dossier to open up an investigation into the Trump campaign. They used the same unverified garbage, to spy on a Trump campaign associate, and they were all warned it was unverified and that Hillary paid for it, and it was never corroborated or verified, and that Steele hated Hillary Clinton. By the way, a lot of it's since been debunked. Those known lies were used to repeatedly, 4 separate occasions, commit fraud on FISA courts and literally deny a fellow American of their constitutional rights. And then they used it later. Remember the insurance policy to illegally attempt a coup, again, using the Russian lies. They knew they were Russian lies. They were briefed that they were Russian lies to unseat the president that they didn't like, the candidate they didn't like, the one who had smelly Walmart voters following him. After a months-long investigation, meaning almost 9 months, Lisa Page, James Comey, others have even admitted there's no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. But that didn't stop this very same group of unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats from plotting to remove a duly elected president from office. Watch this.
There were meetings at the Justice Department in which it was discussed whether the vice president and a majority of the cabinet could be brought together to remove the president of the United States under the 25th Amendment.
All right, joining us now with a reaction to our top story, former DNC Communications Director Luis Miranda and also U.S. Border Patrol Council Vice President Art Del Cueto is with us. Art, you've been there before as on the border. Is this a crisis when we're losing 70,000 people a year to drug overdoses, 90% of heroin coming across the border, massive increases in fentanyl?
Well, it's definitely a big crisis. Not only that, but you start looking at the amount of individuals that are crossing the border. You talk about the caravans that are coming across the border. All those issues. You look at the attacks on Border Patrol agents while they're out there defending our nation's borders. Everything has been bigger than ever before. It is definitely a crisis. You know, we're lucky we have a president that's actually talking about it and bringing it up to light. I hope this, this national emergency stands. That's a big issue. I know that there's going to be some fighting back and forth with the court, but I hope it stands. But, you know, there's also some issues within the bill itself well, the spending bill, now law, that also has us concerned, though, because it does place some limitations on some of the agents. It places limitation on law enforcement. And
All
it
right, let me
places
bring in
limitations
Luis,
on
if
the
I
way
can,
we
here for a
enforce the
second.
law.
Luis,
Hey, Sean.
how come Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and pretty much most of the Democrats, I got the tapes, how come they all sounded like Donald Trump just a couple of years ago in the second term of Barack Obama? How come then they wanted a wall, then they'd fund a wall, and now it's immoral and we can't spend $1 on the wall? How do you explain the hypocrisy of your party?
It's a great question, Sean, and thanks for having me on. And, you know, to just a quick aside here, you're not giving yourself enough credit. The president's obviously watching during executive time.
Luis, so I asked you a question. They appreciate Luis, come on.
But here's the thing. When Donald,
I asked the question.
Me,
they
when
supported
Barack Obama,
it a couple of years ago. Why not now?
When Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton talked about this issue back in 1995, 1997, 2005.
You don't want to answer my question, do you?
I'm telling you, I'm explaining it to you. The numbers of illegal entries were far, far higher, over 1 million every year. There was actually a situation that needed to be put under control, and that's why from 2000 to 2014, you saw the number of Border Patrol agents doubled. You saw more resources. You saw more
of the
efforts to go ahead and
90% of America's heroin. Luis, you got to listen.
I'm listening.
90% of America's heroin crosses that border. 300 heroin deaths a week in this country.
And we both agree that's a problem.
Are you going to tell me?
We both agree that's a problem.
Are you going to tell me that we don't have an obligation to secure that border, to stop the influx of drugs, cartels, and gang members, and those that also, not the 98%, the 2% of criminals that commit murder and sexual assault crimes? Don't we have an obligation to protect them, yes or no?
Absolutely. And what we need is a safe and orderly border. But what you're talking about, that crisis, that fentanyl, all those drugs are coming up through the legal ports, in vehicles, in trucks. And so we need to put as much effort into that as if you're trying to put walls in between entry points where there's not that kind of traffic. The statistics from the Trump administration itself tell you that it's marijuana and families that are coming across.
They want to put their head in the sands. And meanwhile,
Sean,
it's only the ports of entry. They supported the same thing. You get the last word.
It's incredible because, to be honest, we are constantly getting methamphetamines and fentanyl between the port of entries, not just at the ports of entries.
Thank you. And you
that's why we're concerned with some of these bills.
No.
I've been out there.
He actually knows.
Trump's DEA.
And I've been down there 14 times.
Ask Trump's DEA.
When we come back, Alan Dershowitz, Mark Penn, blasting Andrew McCabe's outrageous comments about the president. They'll join us. And tonight, a one-on-one. Me and former DNC chairwoman Donna Brazile and Newt Gingrich tonight. Busy breaking Friday News Night. Stay with us. Story tonight, preview of an upcoming interview on 60 Minutes, strongly suggests former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director at one point, admitted to conspiring with other high-ranking deep state officials to secretly record President Trump, remove him using the 25th Amendment, which it was not designed to be used for. McCabe's spokeswoman today denied this report, but we'll have to wait and see. Joining us now with reaction, Alan Dershowitz, professor at Harvard. He wrote the introduction to a new book featuring the text of the Constitution, which I wish some people would read in Congress, and the Declaration of Independence. And we're also joined by former Clinton pollster and advisor Mark Penn. You know, it's interesting. Both of you take heat for being on this show. Both of you take heat for being intellectually consistent and honest. I'm looking at, I've never seen a case where one candidate was favored over another and they ignored all this other Russia stuff between Uranium One and a Russian dossier, and the Espionage Act and deleting subpoenaed emails, and then bludgeon a sitting president before and after with a dossier paid for by the opposition party, Mark Penn, and never verified. And they lied to FISA courts and committed fraud.
Well, but I think what's most stunning about what we're learning is this jump to an independent or special counsel after Comey was fired, because they couldn't wait for new FBI director to be confirmed under constitutional procedures. They didn't have a crime here. No investigation had been obstructed in any way. They jumped to take this investigation and make sure that they would continue to control it and put it in the hands of their friends. And that's what's so shocking about some of the new revelations that we're learning.
You know, and Professor Dershowitz, we know they were looking into this for the 9 months prior. Comey gets fired, 8 days. This is what's going on behind the scenes. They want to wear a wire on the president. 3 different versions of what happened from Rod Rosenstein. Oh, that didn't happen. Then he's sarcastic. Then he said, well, I didn't order it. I'm a civil libertarian, I think, like you are. I mean, and then we use an unverified dossier. They don't tell the courts that Hillary bought and paid for it and is not verified, to destroy the constitutional rights of not only one person, but a whole party.
Well, let's talk about Rod Rosenstein. He is the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. He was the acting Attorney General for this case. And he is suggesting using the 25th Amendment that was written to take care of a problem of Woodrow Wilson having a stroke or President Reagan being shot and being on the operating table. You know, these guys are watching House of Cards instead of reading the Constitution. The Constitution is as clear as can be. The 25th Amendment is applicable only if you're incapacitated. It's not a substitute for impeachment. It's not a substitute for an election. And if Rod Rosenstein actually thought about and suggested wiring the president, invoking the 25th Amendment, he should be fired before he has an opportunity to resign. He should be disgraced. The Inspector General of the Justice Department should be looking into it. This is as close as this country has ever come to the consideration of a coup d'etat, a constitutionally unlawful coup d'etat against the duly elected president. Whether you like him or not, whether you voted against him as I did or not, the Constitution has to prevail. The 25th Amendment has to mean what it says. And when you have a Deputy Attorney General thinking about circumventing the 25th Amendment, that is close to a constitutional crisis.
I've called this the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in American history. You're right, Professor Dershowitz, because that's what it was. And Mark Penn, it's because of 2 reasons. They don't like him. They don't like his policies. They don't like him personally. This is a frightening moment that we have been able to reveal.
Well, we know from the page-struck text that those 2 characters really hated Donald Trump. But now that everyone's gone out on speaking tours and said they also hated Donald Trump, then political animus seemed to go through the entire system and create a hysteria that created investigations that didn't have a factual basis. There was no obstruction. There was no Russia collusion. There was a dossier paid for by the other campaign that never should have led to any of this. And we're just learning the confirmation of all this as these people write books and go out and speak and think that they're patriots.
And it's the end justify the means. Anything to get Trump, no matter what the Constitution says, no matter how you must compromise the Constitution and civil liberties, anything that gets Trump. Every civil libertarian ought to be up in arms about that alleged conversation involving a Deputy Attorney General of the United States.
Professor, let me ask you.
The ACLU should be in this case, and they're on the other side.
Do you see crimes committed by this upper echelon in all of this attempted coup, which I agree with you? Do you see crimes?
I see political sins. I see violations of the Constitution. But again, I always have to ask the question.
Constitution's our rule of law, sir.
I have not seen crimes. Well, that's not a criminal statute. So, you know, what they did was wrong and unconstitutional.
If you lie to a FISA court, for example, and withhold exculpatory information, is that a crime?
That could be a contempt of court, and I think the FISA court ought to look into that, whether they were treated contemptuously by the state, by
I've got to give it to you.
Withholding
You're the greatest defense attorney ever.
Denied them.
Admit nothing, you know, but I think we all would admit that when you commit a fraud, if I committed a fraud before a court, Professor Dershowitz, you're a great lawyer. I'd hire you, and I don't think you and a dream team of lawyers could get me off. Although you've done it in the past. Good to see you all. All right, up next, no topic off limit, one-on-one. Former DNC chairwoman Donna Brazile. Also, Newt Gingrich weighs in on the rise of socialism and much more as we continue this busy News Friday. All right, for weeks we have been detailing the Democrats' radical alerts to the left. Some freshman Democratic lawmakers openly pushing for, well, beyond socialism. Many of the 2020 Democratic candidates keep proposing radical liberal policies. Here with reaction, former interim DNC chairwoman, somebody I've gotten along really well with over the years. Donna, you know what? I always see you, you're kind and nice, and I've tried not to be too hard on you in the past, right? We get along pretty well.
You've been hard on me, but you've been fair. And as you well know, Sean, and it's good to talk to you and see you. I've always pushed back because I think you and I come from the same type of family. We know how to stand up for what we believe in. And I do too. I respect that with you.
I don't think you would ever make a proposal that's going to guarantee that'll eliminate all health care, 70% marginal tax rate, that eventually will eliminate airplanes and cows, one that will guarantee healthy government food, a place to stay, retirement, health care, and a takeover of industry, and the rebuilding of pretty much every building in the country. Why do I suspect all these years I've known you, and I know you slant left, you're not going to support that, are you, the new Green Deal?
Well, first of all, I think the party would like to see a very vigorous debate on climate change. We know that climate change, at least many of us on the Democratic side, we believe that climate change is real, and we believe that there are public policy solutions that can get us away from this catastrophic disaster that will alter our economy and impact where we live and our economy.
That part, but you're not answering my question. Here's my question. Is there any part of what I mentioned, free housing, free health care, no more private insurance, 70% marginal rate, guaranteed sustained wage, family medical leave, vacations, retirement, paid for, guaranteed healthy government food, K through college and beyond, economic security, housing, pretty much cradle to grave, womb to tomb stuff. Do you think, and it was all put down on paper, don't you agree with me that this is political suicide for the Democrats?
Well, Sean, if you don't mind, I could take a script from just about every Democratic playbook I've seen over the last 2 years and the last 20 years, and it reads like this. We want an economy that works for all people. We want to address these systemic problems, whether it's infrastructure, which I think the president agrees. We want to deal with rising prescription prices. The president agrees. We want to deal with making sure that
Look at prison reform, Donna, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the first step, President Trump signed that bill. It's a bipartisan bill. Look, we believe that what President Trump said at the beginning of his State of the Union message, which is we have to find common ground. We have to work on these issues.
I agree with that.
These are not left issues. They're not right issues. But it's important to recognize that people on both the left and the right,
let me press you a little bit on this.
They agree. I know you're trying to press me as to where I stand. Is there anything that I mentioned, though? I run my mouth. I don't run for president.
I know you do. Is there anything that I mentioned, anything in this New Deal, seriously, I'll go item by item if you want, is there anything that you agree with there? Getting rid of airplanes, high-speed trains replacing, getting rid of cows, free, guaranteed everything, 70% tax rate.
As you understand, Sean, I do believe that we have to transition out of fossil fuels, and we have a plan in which we can get that. We can have that accomplished. I believe in solar, wind, and renewable energies.
Anything I mentioned, do you agree with that?
I believe, yes, I do believe that we can transition to out of fossil fuels, and that we need to put more investment and reliance on. It's going to take, just like we said 10 years ago, we want to be energy independent, and look where we are today. We have to set up
because of oil, gas, and coal.
But look.
Thank God.
No, we said all of the above. Back in the day,
I'm an all of the above guy.
We said all of the above.
Show me the technology.
That included renewable. That included renewable. That included solar.
But think of the energy independence. Career jobs for people.
All of the above.
Don, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for being with us. All right, Newt Gingrich reacts to mini monologue on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Hannity Watch on the socialist takeover of the Democratic Party continues. Destroying everything in its path. Now, just this week, Amazon announced that it is canceling plans for its New York City expansion following attacks from leftists, extremists, progressives, and lawmakers like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, dealing an embarrassing blow to Governor Andrew Cuomo and Comrade Mayor Bill de Blasio. Well, now the move would have brought 25,000 jobs to the city, reported average salary $150,000, but they would have paid $3 billion in tax breaks for it. The Congresswoman praised the exit, writing, "Every day, New Yorkers and their neighbors defeated Amazon's corporate greed," prompting Amazon to fire back, accusing her of being, quote, "never Amazon." Okay, adding that the company doesn't want to, quote, work in this environment in the long term. To be fair to the Congresswoman, she does have one point. Why are they paying just one company? Not every business in New York. Why does one company get $3 billion in tax breaks and grants? Every other business gets nothing. And by the way, for the last 2 years, Amazon has paid zero in federal income taxes. Now, we should all want a lot more equal playing field. Maybe they'll think in New York, let's cut everybody's taxes, because maybe that would foster competition, innovation, invite a business-friendly environment. Is this still a loss of jobs opportunity? But is it really something to celebrate? And by the way, now she's calling on that $3 billion to be spent on teachers in the subway. However, she didn't figure out the $3 billion in incentives was based on the job creation. So there's not a pot of gold out there to be spent. To have more tax revenue, you actually need people paying taxes. So it looks like all of this may have set off a war within the Democratic Party. Governor Cuomo accusing New York Democrats of, quote, putting their own political interest above their community. Although, Governor Cuomo, you've done the same thing. He has been banning fracking of natural gas that would create hundreds of thousands of high-paying jobs in upstate New York. Think of the revenue that he's losing there to tap in this vast resource that we have. Even Comrade de Blasio told local media that he'd take on any progressive who thinks it's a good idea to lose jobs and revenue. Now, the New York Times writes that, quote, the Amazon fight has exposed deep fissures within the Democratic Party, so much so that even conspiracy theory TV, MSNBC, they're actually sounding the alarm. They're not liking the fighting. Watch this.
Somebody like Amazon comes to your area, that attracts other tech giants. The opportunities lost there are extraordinary.
When you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I find extremely dangerous at this point, and if people in the party don't start to speak up against people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is young and dynamic, but does not know what she's talking about.
And what's shocking to me is yet once again she shows how little she understands not just economics, but even unemployment. She's the one who said the reason unemployment is so low is because a lot of people have 2 jobs. She needs to learn basic things about what to be a representative.
Now, this fits exactly with what I've been saying. The Democratic Party has now been taken over by a new radical, extreme Democratic Socialist wing, and that's what they want. And don't forget, by the way, about Ocasio-Cortez, in her particular case, the new Green Deal. That's going to destroy the lifeblood of our economy, abolish ICE, an agency which captures criminals and human traffickers. And by the way, free handouts, free education, free college, free health care, free retirement, whether you're willing or unwilling to work. Everything's free, and a 70% marginal tax rate to boot. Now, to the Congresswoman's credit, she is the new leader of the Democratic Party. Congratulations, Congresswoman. 2020 Democrats, they're all signing on to a lot of what she's selling. They're sending the message loud and clear. This radicalism is here to stay. All right, joining us now with reaction, Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. By the way, new podcaster himself. It's called Newt's World. And by the way, Jesse's not going to like that. And it's available on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you go for your podcast. Look, I have a lot of questions for you, but the one thing about New York is they have made it impossible for any business. I got to know Bobby Jindal, Rick Scott, and Rick Perry so well because they constantly came up to New York to visit companies and steal them, and they did so. And New York is losing tens and tens of thousands of people every year, like California and Illinois and New Jersey. Meanwhile, Texas and Florida gaining nearly 400,000 new people moving in every year.
Basically, Amazon comes in and says, hi, we'd like to create a bunch of jobs. We want some tax breaks to create the jobs. But in the end, I think they're talking about like 25,000 jobs. Now, the multiplier effect in housing, in local grocery stores, across the board is huge.
Look, but this is a party now that in 10 years they want to eliminate airplanes. They don't want us eating meat. Everything is going to be free, guaranteed Bill of Rights, free jobs, sustaining wage, family leave, medical leave, vacation, retirement security, healthy food guaranteed by your government, K through college and trade school, everything is paid for. Free health care, but you can't have private insurance. Free housing, no economic, and it's an environment free of monopolies, in other words, takeover of industry, and free security economically, whether you're unable or unwilling to work.
I'm watching here, in the last 3 weeks it suddenly hit me. When Booker, Senator Booker, gets up and announces he's vegan and we should quit eating meat, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so the Republicans get everybody who likes McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, they get the vegans? It's going to be a great year. I'm telling you, it's going to be a great year.
All right, Mr. Speaker, you just made my weekend. That was great. I love all that food, but I can't eat what I want every day. It stinks, but I do sometimes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, no villain today. None. We got a hero of the day, and we're going to take down a man who, they want to take down a man who pledged allegiance to ISIS? We'll explain straight ahead. All right, no villain of the day is Friday. Hero of the day, Maricopa County, Arizona police officer, Sergeant Brandon Wells. He risked his life in January when attacked by a man pledging his allegiance to ISIS. Look at this. The body camera footage shows his bravery in the face of pure evil. Thankfully, the officer was not injured. Also tonight, our friend Terrence Williams is back. He's pretty excited about the president's emergency declaration. Really excited. Take a look.
Trump is building the wall, y'all. But they keep coming from wall to wall. 'Cause the writings on
the wall. Terrence is great. All right, unfortunately, that's all the time we have left. We'll never be the hate Trump media. Let not your heart be troubled. The news continues right here on the Fox News Channel. Have a great weekend. See you back here on Monday.